was the first thing for me. I began to like, man, like, I don't like the way this makes me feel. All right, brothers, welcome to today's episode of the Porn to Purpose podcast. We are back live with you here today. I'm with my good brother, Yeadon Smith. Yeadon, welcome. Thanks for joining us again here today, brother.
Good to be here, man.
Yes, sir.
Good
Yes, sir.
to be here.
Yes, sir. So we have I think an interesting, revealing conversation outlined for today. And that today is the conversation of I was reflecting upon my earlier journey in my relationship with porn, and what were some signs that became present for me that I wanted to make a shift, make a change in my relationship with porn. I think we've all been there, Yeadon. I suspect you have. That's what's brought you here. But there becomes a moment, like I think there's a period in one's journey with pornography or any way of life, like any way that we're living, right? We're living one way, we're kind of unconscious to it. Maybe it's just who we are, that we don't recognize or see the dangers or the flaws in that way of living. But then we begin to wake up to it. And I know for me, there were some, as I grew, I think as I kind of woke up, you might say, these things became more and more obvious to me. And these were the things that really helped me want that really helped me want to begin to make the change in my life around this.
You know, I love this because looking back, the signs are super obvious, but in real time in my life, of course, I rationalize I remember we did a multi-part episode on the myths of porn.
Mhm.
The story that I told myself so that I didn't feel the internal pressure to quit as much. Yeah, this stuff, signs. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation today, Matt.
Beautiful, brother. Beautiful. And the hope here, brothers, is that maybe as we talk about some of the stuff, maybe you'll begin to see some evidence of these signs or symptoms in your own life. We did an episode before, and it's kind of one of my primary teachings. It's like, how do I know if I have a problem with porn? Like, how do I kind of assess that for myself? So these ideas, I think, will kind of feed into that or a little bit. So I'll begin with this. Now, I think it's important in this conversation to like distinguish the story that many of us carry around pornography. Like for me, raised in religion, I'll just say, not to throw any shade on anything in particular. There's a lot of story around sexual sin, sexual shame, something being inherently wrong with me or my sexuality. So that seems to be kind of embedded from an early age, just through, I guess, certain environmental influences that we may be subject to, right?
Matt,
So
let's talk real for just a second here,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Let's be real. We can dance around religion, but you and I we grew up similarly,
yeah,
embedded in Christianity. I
yeah.
love Jesus. I'm still following Jesus.
Uh-huh.
But in Christianity, right, you have the hierarchy of sin. You have like murder, porn, sex before marriage, right? It's like
Yeah,
in Christianity, sexual sin, impurity, immorality, whatever type of term we're going to use for the porn, uh, it is put on such a high pedestal as such a bad thing, so evil,
yeah,
so devilish, so
yeah,
whatever bad adjective we want to use here.
yeah,
And that sort of conversation creates such fear because pornography is such a secret sin. I know you've heard that phrase. I
yeah,
grew up with that. Like, what secret sin do you have in your life? And it's like,
yeah.
well, nobody I know is struggling with pornography, so I must be the only guy that has
Right,
this issue. And it's
right.
terrifying in that situation. So
Yeah,
yeah, as much as I'm not bashing Christianity, I'm not bashing religion, but let's be real, right? Christianity, as one of its, for better for worse, the system has this. I don't want to call it narrative, but the system programs us to put pornography on this. This is so bad.
yeah,
that it's so dangerous to talk about because I risk all of my relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. I do have a tendency to tread lightly around that because I do want to just honor and respect, that and where people are coming from and also my faith tradition, that I hail from. And yeah, that those ideas were deeply embedded
Yeah.
in my Christian upbringing,
Same for
and
me, right? This
yeah,
is so
yeah,
evil and so bad and so
mhm,
terrible
yeah,
that don't do it.
right, right. So I think it's important to recognize that there is that common kind of conditioning that we find in the Christian faith and other faith traditions, I'm sure. But then there's this
And
also,
also,
so
one more thing, not just in
yeah,
Christian, but when we were growing up,
yeah,
right? Pornography as a culture, like right now, pornography, I don't want to say it's a lot more accepted, but there
yeah,
is a lot more tolerance of it in general in society
yeah,
today. Good,
yeah,
bad, indifferent. I'm not going to judge whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Just it is. There's
yeah,
a lot more conversations about pornography that happen today than when
yeah,
we were growing up. Even if we take Christianity out of it, those
yeah,
conversations weren't happening
yeah,
when we were growing up.
yeah. Hey, Yaden, I'm getting a little feedback from your audio
Getting
there.
some feedback from the audio. Stand by.
Yeah,
Let me see if I can
thanks.
fix it.
Okay.
Okay, how we doing now?
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Awesome, awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's important to just to note that.
Yeah,
Because I want to go to my first point, which is what I began to notice was the way in which porn made me feel. Right, besides the euphoria and bliss, which comes with just the initial right act, but for me, I noticed that there was this inherent kind of shame and guilt that came with it. Porn took me to some very dark places, and I think for me, at the core of it, there was a knowing that it was out of integrity with the essence of my being. It took me to a place sexually, mentally, that wasn't in alignment with my highest nature. There was an aspect of it that wasn't healthy for me, and I began to notice, man, I don't like the way porn makes me feel. It made me feel depressed, again, shame, guilt. It affected my mental health. It took me to unhealthy places that weren't in alignment with what I truly desire for myself. Um, so that was the first thing for me. I began to man, I don't like the way this makes me feel, and that was really important for me to pick up on. And I think and the reason I started the conversation off the way I did, because I think it's important to distinguish, was that just my story about sex and pornography that I was given, or was there actually something kind of within my spirit that was telling me, hey, this isn't cool, this path, so that was the first piece for me.
I would say the same thing, right? I found my first Playboy when I was 8,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so mesmerizing. But I also somewhere in I remember, right, that kind of emotional edge where it's oh, this, even at 8 years old, if my parents walked into the room right now,
Right,
I would freak out,
right,
right? I didn't
right,
have any of the programming or condition, or I hadn't absorbed that from religion yet at 8 years. Oh, there's something off here. As
right.
attractive and mesmerizing and
Yeah.
exciting as it was, something is not right here. And those
Yes.
same feelings happen to me, right? Guilt, something's wrong. I feel guilty about this. I feel
Yeah.
shame. I feel fear. I didn't like how I felt. Right. You have the mesmerization, the excitement,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
dopamine, and then the crash right after.
Yeah. Yes. So a recognition of that, I think if there's I noticed it kind of dimmed my light. I might say it had a way of dimming my light. And what I also found is that as I continued to grow, as I grew spiritually, um, as I continued my path to what I would call my awakening, or my spiritual journey, I began that became more and more obvious that this is not in alignment with the man that I want to be, and it's actually hurting me in some way. So was I think that was the top of the list, as it relates to ways in which I was beginning to see that porn was having a negative effect on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here, bro.
Um, yes, yes. I just knew it was out of integrity for me. Number two, And again, I kind of outlined some of these. Yeadon and I went over them a little bit ahead of time. Yeadon, I want to invite you to jump in and add any
Right
additionally
on, man.
or
Yeah.
take these in any way that you desire to. So for me, I began to notice, right? And I began to notice this around age, like in my early 20s. I had moved out of my house. I was living in my apartment for the first time by myself with a good buddy. I was in my party phase. Um, I had high speed internet in my house, like, and that was like a new thing. And there was all these downloading services like Napster and all these things, right? And for the first time, all this like this library of pornography was available. Library seems like an understatement. I think you've used the word anthology.
Yeah.
Right? What was available at my fingertips, and it was like this whole new drug, this whole new experience. And what I began to notice early on, and then this continued on throughout my young adult years, was that there were times in which I found myself staying at home on a Friday night to watch porn, right? Rather than want to go out and be with my friends and
Mm.
and and, and actually connect with women, or I would view porn and masturbate prior to going out, right? And then it would be a Friday or Saturday night, and I'd be at the bar feeling yucky, feeling depleted, feeling disconnected, feeling sexually muted, if you will. And what I began to notice was, and I remember the thought, and this thought still sticks with me. I had this thought that, like, man, why even bother going out and worrying about getting with girls if I could just sit and do this all day? It was like scratching that itch without having to be vulnerable, without having to connect, without having to put any effort or energy in. I
Mhm.
was noticing, and I noticed that through my young adult years and into several of my relationships where porn was still present. I would utilize pornography, right, at night or when my girlfriend was away or not home or while we were apart. And then when we'd come together, I just didn't have that sexual desire. I noticed that it was having an adverse effect on me sexually, and I was getting my sexual needs met in other places, and I wasn't that desire for true, loving, connected intimacy was diminished because there was an outlet somewhere else, and I was getting that need met elsewhere. So I was robbing myself of that in my relationships.
Well, what you say right there reminds me of something that a friend of mine in youth ministry said back in the day. I was in my 20s doing youth ministry full time, had a friend,
Hmm.
and we would talk about pornography periodically with the guys at youth group. It was like basically the same message, like this is evil, stay away from it. That was the
Right,
only framework I had at the
right,
time to look at pornography. Or
right.
not look at, well, yeah, to look at pornography too.
Uh-huh.
But and he said this great analogy, which still sticks with me. He said, like, pornography wires your brain a certain way. It's like when you're using porn, you're programming your brain to use a specific controller on a video game system, right? Back in the day, it was Halo. Halo was the big game. If you are razor sharp at Halo and then you try and play Call of Duty, the controls are different. The
Yeah,
buttons are different.
yeah,
Right? The actual mechanics of a PlayStation controller versus an Xbox controller, they're different. And the pornography wires your brain in a way that you cannot interact with healthy sexuality because
yeah,
you're using the wrong controller for the game.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that analogy.
yeah, yeah. And to that point, there were times I recall I would view porn, use porn. I'll just say use porn. Like my girlfriend would be away, or she'd be gone for the day. I'd be watching porn, sneaking around, and then she would come home, and she would want to engage sexually, and I would be done. I would be spent. I would be
Mm,
disconnected, and I would withdraw from her. I would avoid her. And even though I was engaging in that behavior, there was still another part of me that had this awareness. It was like, man, this is not it, man. This is not it. This is not what what my ideal, loving, connected, intimate relationship looks like. So I began to notice that, while porn was giving me the sexual fix, if you will, it was actually robbing me of true sex and intimacy that I was really desiring in my life. So yeah,
mm,
critical.
man.
A rewiring.
My
Um,
story is a little bit different because I didn't
yeah,
have a
please.
girlfriend. I was straight laced, rule follower, youth
Yeah,
minister. uh, Married at 25. So I didn't
yeah,
have a girlfriend or anything like that until suddenly got engaged and got married. married Jessica, who I'd been working with for several years. But what I noticed for me is like the porn was, I knew, because I was still stuck with the religious lens of this is evil. Now, let me say real clearly, I don't think porn is good. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it has any real value. But looking back, it was the only coping mechanism I had
Right.
for life.
Hmm.
And one thing that happened to me is I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. That was a big, looking back, like obviously that was a sign that I
Yeah.
needed to stop. I want to stop, but I
Yeah.
couldn't because I
Yeah.
didn't know how to cope with life, cope with the emotional pain of being vulnerable, conflict, whatever was going on emotionally for me. Porn
Uh-huh.
was my go-to coping mechanism
Yeah.
to deal with that emotional pain and
Yeah.
pressure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I think maybe we'll just go there. This was one of the points that I had written down, but since you've opened that up, I mean, I think it's time. It's like that was a big that would if I were to give like a third point here today, it would be that was a huge one. I noticed, right, as this was continuing on in my life, I wanted to stop. I had a strong desire to stop. I had a personal conviction that this wasn't good for me and all the red flags, but I couldn't stop.
Mm,
Or as we say, I quit 1,000 times. You
yeah.
know, I quit 1,000 times. I repented 1,000 times. I said I was done 1,000 times. I got rid of all my stuff 1,000 times. I put the blockers on. I did all this stuff, and I was done 1,000 times. But I continued to return to it, and that was something for me that again just became glaringly obvious. Like this is a problem for me. This is not just some thing I can just kick to the curb whenever I choose to. It's like no, I need to do some deeper work around this.
You know, as much as I wanted to quit porn, I basically had given up hope that I ever
Mhm,
could
mhm.
for decades
Yeah.
because right, I quit 1,000 times
Mhm,
trying to solve this on my own
mhm.
with nothing but failure and frustration
Yeah.
to the point where, before you and I had met, I had just given up. I was like, well, there is no hope. There's no way I can change. I've tried everything,
Mhm.
done everything I know how to do,
Yeah.
and nothing worked. So in my, 2 years ago, before I jumped in with the Liberation Bootcamp, I was just trying to manage my addiction, manage the porn use, and try and keep it from destroying my life and
Yeah.
having my life implode around me.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
kudos to you. I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that dogged deterrence. Like I am going to figure out
Yeah.
what is going on
Mhm.
so I can leave this in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to. For me personally, man, I knew I was called to more in my life, and I felt porn was really hindering me big time from that. It was dimming my light significantly, and I was way out of integrity. So yeah, I had to find a solution, and that was a big turning point for me. Thank you. Um,
We got so let's go back through these points, right? We just talked about I want to quit as a sign. What was number two?
Number two was for me decreased sexuality. It
Decreased
actually robbed me of
sexuality, right?
true
You're
intimacy.
you're
Yeah,
you're using up that sexual energy with
yeah,
porn instead of with a human, with a
hmm,
person.
yeah.
And the number one, what was the first one we hit?
The first one was the shame, the
Yeah,
shame, the inherent.
how
I
we
just knew it was out
feel
of
after
integrity
it's
for
like,
me. Yeah,
I feel bad after
yeah.
I do this. So, excuse me, my dogs just went crazy. I'll be right back. Let me shut the door.
Yeah. So we had the shame piece, we had decreased sexuality, and this kind of recognition that I couldn't stop, even though I wanted to, or I recognized it was important to. And one thing I would like to add for myself, brothers, is for me, I found, we say in the community that the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And that what we're truly seeking in pornography or any addictive behavior is connection, and that's actually the solution. And depending on where you want to go with this conversation, I think it's ultimately, for me, it's been ultimately connection with God and connection with myself, like learning to find that within myself. But there are other aspects of my life that I found pornography was actually robbing me of healthy connection. And this was kind of like, I would say maybe the bonus piece here is I was going to porn to find relief, to find connection that maybe I was missing in my life, one way or the other. Maybe it was spiritually, maybe it was socially, maybe it was in a loving, intimate relationship. But what I actually found was that porn was actually keeping me disconnected. It was
Yeah.
keeping me disconnected from others. It was keeping me disconnected from women and from the true intimacy that I wanted. Like I was going to porn to like almost to scratch that intimacy itch that I had, that desire that I had in my life, but it was actually keeping me from true intimacy and from what I was wanting in my life. And also it kept me disconnected socially. I noticed when I would use porn, it I have a tendency to withdraw, to
Mm-hmm.
not want to go out, to like not want to look people in the eyes, to kind of close myself off, to stay small, to not be seen. And I began to notice that as well. And that was another really key indicator for me that porn was really unhealthy. I kind of mentioned earlier today how it caused me to dim my light, or it had an effect of dimming my light. And that was another one. It kept me disconnected from others, from God, from myself, ultimately.
Same thing here. I
Yeah.
was disconnected from my spouse.
Yeah.
I was disconnected from my spiritual connection. I
Yeah.
was disconnected. I was just I wasn't fully connected. I told myself, well, I'm connected here, 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 here.
Yeah.
There's this gaping hole that is not really letting me connect the way that I want to with
Yeah.
the people that matter the most. I mean, I
Yeah.
have 4 children. I have two teenage boys, soon to be teenage boy, and a daughter. And
Uh-huh.
one of my biggest fears, knowing this grip pornography had on me, like, holy crap, what are my children going to do?
Yeah.
When I was 10, it was a Playboy. My son
Yeah.
is 10, it's a phone.
Yeah.
Right? This terror and this disconnect from my family, the most important people in my life, because
Yeah.
I had this cloud floating around me all the time.
Yes. Yes. So, brothers, maybe you can relate to today's conversation. Maybe you're somewhere in your journey, and maybe you're beginning to see some of these signs in your own life. Maybe you're noticing the way in which porn induces like these feelings of shame, whether they were given to you by somebody else or it's just natural, dimming your light, if you will, having an effect on mental health and other aspects of your life. Maybe you're noticing that it's causing you to like withdraw sexually and maybe from the loving, intimate, connected relationships in your life that you're truly desiring. Maybe you're noticing that porn generally causes you to withdraw from others, from your partner, from your friends socially, causes you to get small and retract. Or maybe you've noticed that you want to stop, you've tried to stop, you said you were done, but you've been unable, like Yeadon spoke
Hmm.
to here today. So maybe you're resonating with one or all of these ideas. If that's the case, Yeadon, what's the offer? What's the invitation today, brother?
Y'all, you're not alone. We're all in this struggle. You've heard Matt and me talk about, like, this is the reality. And the reality for recovery is we cannot do this alone. I have decades of experience trying to do it on my own, and it failed. I don't know any man in my life that has been able to leave pornography behind by himself. Maybe somebody who just never got stuck in it to begin with. But if you're listening, we know that's not us. That's not us.
Mhm.
We got dealt the porn hand, the porn card in our deck of cards. We got
Yeah.
stuck with it. Y'all, get connected. Our offer is we got the Liberation Boot Camp. It's a 6-month program. Deep dive. Learn about what is going on inside. Why can you not kick this habit? Why can you not move past it? It takes work, it takes perseverance, and it takes connection. It takes community. It takes
Yeah.
being in a group of men that are not afraid. Well, they
Mhm.
are afraid, but they
Yeah.
face the fear and stand up anyway to say, hey, I need help.
Yep.
I'm not doing well today. I'm struggling. I had a
Yep.
reset. I had a relapse. What
Yep.
am I missing? How do I improve my framework? What's the next step for me? How do I continue my growth as a man so that I leave pornography in the dust? Yo, check out the Liberation Bootcamp. You can find it at porntopurpose.com. Get on a call with
Yep.
Matt. Get on a call with me. Private call, right? I know how scary it is to talk about this stuff. And here we're doing a podcast talking about,
Right.
recovering porn addicts.
Right.
So we know what this is like. You're
Yeah.
not alone. I know it's scary. You can do it.
Mhm.
Check out porntopurpose.com. Get on a call with us. We want to help.
Yep. Beautiful, brothers. Thanks so much for that invitation. And guys, last week we did Yeadon's celebration episode, 2 years porn free. So, Yeadon's the proof in the pudding,
Yo,
so
this shit
yeah,
works
yeah,
100%.
yep, yep. It ain't easy, but it's worth it. That's for sure.
Absolutely right.
Yep. Brothers, thanks so much for joining us here today. As Yeadon offered, go check out porntopurpose.com, see what we got going on in the boot camp. We'd love a conversation with you, help you wherever you are in your journey. Thanks so much for tuning in here today. And we wish you a beautiful day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Peace and power, brothers.
Noble men.
Noble men. Bye-bye.
See you next time.